masculine attributes. But as Elohim, if He were to rule the universe strictly as Elohim, that is to display these masculine attributes, if you will. If He were to rule only as Elohim, there wouldn't be a creation left to rule. Do you understand why?
Yep.
Why?
Because He'd give us the smackdown.
Exactly. I wasn't going to quite put it that way. But that's exactly right. If He were to rule strictly as Elohim, if He were to rule strictly as judge, there wouldn't be a creation left to rule. Why? Because all have sinned and have come short of the glory of God. There is none righteous, no, not one. And so He doesn't just rule as Elohim. He also reveals to us His name, Yud-He, Vav-He. Which, grammatically speaking, has a feminine ending. You see, because not only do the masculine attributes come from the Creator, but the feminine do as well. Because He created them male and female, right? And so all of these things that we determine to be masculine in nature, and all those things that we determine to be feminine in nature, ultimately come from where? The same Creator. And so when we think of feminine attributes, we think of things like nurturing, compassion, mercy. You see, the same one who is judge is also the compassionate, merciful, the one who is long-suffering, not willing that any should perish. And so this we see in, if you will, in the name Yud-He Vav-He, Hashem, as the rabbi referred to it, the name. And so, likewise, if He were to rule strictly as Elohim, that is, displaying judgment, might, and power, there wouldn't be a creation left to rule. Likewise, if He were to rule strictly as Yud-He Vav-He, then there would be chaos. Because what would happen? People are always going to find loopholes and ways to circumvent His instructions. And so what does He do? He rules as Yud-He Vav-He, but He rules as Elohim. He is judge, but He is compassionate. And so in Hebraic, the Hebraic concept of justice, true justice, is judgment tempered with mercy. So back to Pinchas. He takes a javelin and he runs through these two people. And there's an uproar in the camp because he has taken the lives of two people. And yet the Creator promotes him from being a Levite to being a priest, and his sons throughout their generations being a perpetual priesthood. And why? Was it because he killed two people, or was it because he saved more lives than he took? You see, what mankind, what the carnal mind perceives as judgment, perhaps it's possible that the Creator determines as something that is merciful. If we can wrap our brains around that, what we perceive as being harsh and cruel, in the end, I believe the Creator looks at and intends it to be. And if we are spiritually minded, we will come to this conclusion, that in the end, He's not being harsh and cruel. He's being merciful.
Amen.
How many of you have had to allow, permit, even perhaps provoke your children to go through things that hurt you here? To watch, to observe. It hurt you. It ripped your heart out. And yet, not because you want to be cruel and uncaring where they're concerned, but to the contrary, because you do love them. And you do not want them to be a rebellious son. You don't want them to be a glutton and a drunkard. What do? You let them go their own way. Why? In the hope that in the end, when they're feeding the slop to the pigs, they'll come to their senses and realize, even in my Father's house, even the servants have plenty to eat and to spare. What in the world am I doing here? Is that not right? And so how do they perceive it when you cut them off? When you tell them to, if you're going to live that way, go live somewhere else. How do they perceive it? You're being cruel, you're being cold, you just don't understand, etc., etc. But what is your intention? Mercy. Love. Because you can see the end. And all they can see is what's going on right here. Now, I said all of that to say this. That a lot of these things that we can read in our Torah portion, and then the carnal mind looks at it and says, that seems really harsh. Rather than harsh, perhaps we should look at it from the spiritual point of view, because we're supposed to be spiritually minded. Did you know that? We're not to be carnally minded, are we? We're to be spiritually minded. If we look at it from the spiritual mind, or with a spiritual mind, then what we see, or what we begin to see, is the Father's mercy and His wisdom in all of these things. Because He wants us to put the evil out from the midst of us. Now, it's going to seem as if I'm changing gears and I need a paper towel or an eraser or something like that.